Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully everyone's doing well on this beautiful 15th of April as we rush to get our paperwork in for Uncle Sam. Just want to give another shout out to Rainier Avenue Radio for their kind support of public radio to make sure that we can get this message out. So I want to say thank you. Make sure you guys tune in to at Rainier Avenue Radio or radio.world to give your support for the public broadcast. All right, today I wanted to talk a little bit about, I was doing some research and looking into men's mental health. An article kind of came on my desk and it was talking about interesting things between females and men, which I thought I wanted to share. So I found this particular study where they did the values. And I don't know if they polled men and women, I'm not sure, but it was very interesting. I wanted to kind of share. So basically they did a poll and they wanted to see the values that men had within themselves and the values that women had within themselves. And I wanted to kind of break it down and wanted to kind of get your perspective, see what you guys thought. So basically these are the top traits or list of traits that people say society values most in men, and the top traits that society says that they value mostly in women. And the first top tier value that was valued within men, 33%, was honesty and morality. So I was curious to see if you guys wanted to kind of shout out on that and see what you thought about that. Honesty and morality was 33%, the most valuable, important value for men. And for women, the most important or most valuable value in women was physical attractiveness. That was 35%. So you got 33% honesty, morality, and then 35% physical attractiveness. So I'm curious to see if the men were valuing these within themselves or if the men were valuing this for the women or vice versa. Be curious to see where that data came from, but I just want to share that. Couple other highlights. The second point or value that was mostly in men was 23% professional financial success. So think about that. Making sure you got your paper out here, fellas. Yeah, professional financial success. That was 23%. And for women, 30% was empathy, nurturing, and kindness. And so if two of the most valuable traits that we have as an opposite species aren't on the same page, I could see why there could be conflict. And for those individuals that just connected, we're talking about the most important values within men and women. The first one for men was honesty and morality. That was 33%. For women, it was 35% was physical attractiveness. And for men, 23% men valued professional financial success. And 30% women value empathy, nurturing, and kindness. So right there, it seems like there's a disparity. The third one was for men, the most important value in men was ambition, leadership. That was 19%. For women, 22% was, guess what? Intelligence, right? So right there, it seems like there could be a little bit of a disconnect as far as where our values are. So I thought to myself, we as a society, as men, if we're valuing honesty within ourselves, within our relationships, who are we connecting with? Like who are we really connecting with to make sure that we are being honest within ourselves? Who's calling us out on our BS, right? Who's keeping us on the straight and narrow? Before I talked about this before, as far as, who is the individuals in your inner circle? I like to call it, the Jedi team, the Jedi Council, right? And these are basically individuals that you talk to that help keep you on a straight and narrow, right? These are individuals that are really good at what they do in certain aspects of life and you confer with these individuals, and they kind of keep you on the straight and narrow. But the question is, are you being honest? Right? You got to be honest with yourself first before you can be honest with anyone else. And so another thing I want to share too, as far as the values that most men had, was hard work. Well, I'm sorry, we got 19%. Number 4 was strength and toughness for the most important value in men. And then for the fourth one for women, guess what? It was 14%. The most important value in most women was honesty and morality. So that was number 4. So here for women on their value scheme is 4, and for us it's number 1. So we can see why there could be some issues out here when we're dealing with relationships. So I just want to I thought this was really interesting because I felt like, okay, if they're not even aligning out here, how can we make sure we're speaking the same language? And I'm curious to see your thoughts. So feel free to reach out if you guys want to say a word or question, or if you have some thoughts, reach out to us here on Instagram. What do you think is the most important value for you as a man? Would it be honesty for you? Do you feel it would be, professional success, financial success? Do you feel it would be ambition, your strength or toughness? And there's a couple other points too, but I just want to kind of point out those few that I saw. We had hard work was 18%. Physical attractiveness for men was 11%. Empathy and nurturing kindness was 11%. Loyalty and dependability was 9%. Intelligence was 8%. Being family oriented was 5%. And last but not least was 5%. Politeness, respectfulness was a very important value that most men valued. So, and for the women, the list was a little longer. 35% was physical attractiveness. 30% was empathy, nurturing kindness. 22% was intelligence. 14% was honesty, morality. 9% was ambition or leadership. This is what a lot of women valued. 9% was ambition and leadership. 9% was hard work, good work ethic. 8% was professional or financial success. 7% was loyalty, dependability. For those people who just came on, I'm talking about the values that most women have within a relationship. 7% was loyalty, dependability. 7% was competence or ability. We had 6% was independence or self-reliance. 5% was strength or toughness for women. We had 5% was politeness, respectfulness, and the last one was ability to multitask, which doesn't even compute on the man's side as far as the value. So I just thought I'd share that and was curious to see what your thoughts were as far as that. What do you think is important for you as a gentleman out here trying to handle, values within your relationship? Is it important to make sure you're honest in a relationship? Is it important to make sure you got your paper? You tell me, what do you think is the most important quality that you should have in a relationship? Me personally, I think it's important to really be honest with yourself. And I want to kind of share a story here. Back in the day when I was in Detroit, I was working in the classroom, and I was working with a student, and I kind of got close to the student's face, and I was kind of helping him out. And the student just kind of stepped back. We kind of looked at each other, and it was early in the morning. I think I had some coffee, and the student kind of gave me this awkward look. And based on his facial expression, I knew it was a breath issue, basically. And so the student was trying to be very respectful, but basically was like, hey, with all due respect, Mr. Mabry, your breath is kicking, what I'm saying? And I had to kind of take a step back, like, man, what I'm saying? And the ego was bruised, and so I feel like sometimes, where egos can take that slap. But he was keeping it 100, and I needed to make sure I had a mint, chewing gum, something to take care of that, because it wasn't really fair for the young man to be dealing with bad breath. I mean, that's just keeping it 100, right? The young man did not have to be subjected to that foul aroma at the time. And, I had some coffee and wasn't really paying attention. And so why am I saying this? Because sometimes, the truth can hurt the ego, right? And we as men, we want to beat our chests and try to be strong in that. But at the end of the day, I mean, he was right? And what's the big deal, right? Some chewing gum, brush the teeth, take care of it. I'm good to go, right? And we laughed about it. In fact, I used it as a teachable moment, and I said, "Hey, I do appreciate the way you came at me." I said, I try to preserve my pride. I was like, you could have said it this way or whatever. And he was like, "Look, man, I said as best I could," and we joked about it, and I kept it moving. But my point is, we got to be honest with ourselves, right? What are some qualities within yourself that sometimes it's a little kind of like that bad breath, right? It's in your face. It's not really something that's really easy to chew, but you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I got to work on this, right? You got to be honest. And I do like the fact that, it said that quite a few gentlemen value that one ourselves, because we want people to keep it 100 with us, right? Because we know we could build on that if people are being 100, but we got to be 100 with ourselves, right? Or you ever had that friend that, you can go to and they keep it just 100 with you, and you're like, man. But ironically, though, those individuals that keep it 100 with you, it's like that's when you get that breakthrough and you're able to go to the next level, right? I mean, imagine if I stayed there not handling it, the kids talking about you, there's whispers in the classroom, it's all kind of challenges and this and that. And at the end of the day, you really wouldn't be able to be an effective teacher, right? And so it's important to just keep it 100. So what are some things that you could do to work on being honest within yourself? Feel free to share out. I'm curious to see. For me, I would say one thing I'm working on, me personally, because again, I like to keep it 100, is my emotional intelligence, becoming a little bit more stronger with that. What does that look like? Well, being in those very uncomfortable situations, and although they're challenging, not running away from them. That's a challenge, right? Let's say you have a situation where you got to get something and you got to take care of it, and it's people that you really don't want to work with, or they push you in areas that you're weak in. But that's really how you grow, fellas. That's how we grow, and if you just keep it 100, right? I have a couple clients that's hitting the gym. They talk about their hard work and how it was tough in the beginning, and then later on they got a little bit stronger, and now they got different sets and things that they're working on, or certain things they learned that they're a little bit afraid of, and then as they push through it, guess what? They've conquered it. And that's pretty much how we work. But if we avoid things and we don't really face them, then really how will we get strong with those things? And so it's one of those things we just have to work through it, right? But make sure that as you're working through it, you're doing it in a mature fashion. You might say mature. Yeah, what does that look like? Well, that means that, you can't just be cussing people out, even though, that might be what you saw in the community. That might be what you saw in a soundbite. That might be what you saw in a video. That might be how you felt. But is that really the mature way to handling it? No, it's not. And I wanted to bring this up because, I grew up in Detroit originally, and, I've seen a lot of things, and there were certain things that I was exposed to, and there were certain things that I had to be taught. And I remember I was working with some students, and we were doing some activity after school, and I had to go to the restroom, and these were some young men. And I ended up taking these young men to the restroom. And one young man, it was very interesting because he didn't have a dad at his house. He did not know what a commode was. He didn't know. And so I took him to the restroom, and I was like, hey, you got to do number one, number two. He didn't really know what that was. And I had to kind of break it down to him, because he always saw mom, she had a squat, and bam, that's what he saw. So he was thinking, hey, that's how I handle it. I'm like, no, as a man or a young man, you do it this way. So we had these real conversations, right? But long story short, that particular young man, a couple other young men, it kind of touched my heart, because I realized that there's a lot of things that we kind of go out here in the community, but we're not really aware of, right? And we kind of assume. But if we have family we grow up with and we don't really see a person that looks like us, we kind of assume certain things, but not realizing that, certain things you share may change somebody's life just because you took the time to break it down for that person. And so me and that young man, we ended up speaking and kind of told him a little bit about it. He understood. And it gave me a whole different foundational understanding of kind of what's going on within the community. But why do I share that? Well, because, we all have those challenges or those things that we experience based on our particular way of life. And we think that's normal, right? And it's not really normal. You'd be surprised, right? Could you share something that you felt that you went through that, you realized later that was not normal? You thinking, oh, this is just normal, right? I remember when I was in college, had a conversation with an individual who did not have a bank account. That wasn't normal for them. And I had to kind of go through some situations with that to get to know about that. But, a lot of times we take things for granted. And again, we're not, blasting anybody. We're just saying that how can we learn to grow to become better people, right? How can we have a little bit more empathy and understanding for ourselves as well as other people? But we got to be honest, right? We got to be honest. And sometimes that can be a challenge because depending on where you grew up, maybe you didn't feel comfortable, right? I do recall I have a very, very strong mother. And I do recall having certain conversations that if I communicated things that she didn't like, I may not communicate it, right? And so I know early on in my career, I would say I had a habit of not being completely honest. I've changed that now, but a lot of times we get that from trauma, right? Because of fear that maybe if we communicate something fully, it won't be accepted. We won't feel like we're being loved. We won't feel like we're being heard, right? And that affects us as we get older in our adult relationships. We take some of those types of experiences, we carry them on into our, young adult and later adult relationships, unless we heal those relationships. Very, very important, right? I had one client, she basically grew up with a dad that was very loving. However, he wasn't around a lot. And so she basically felt like she needed to connect with a lot of men to get that love, right? And so that can put people out of balance. So you're like, okay, what is it to be honest? Well, if you notice you got a problem, right, at some point you have to say, okay, I have a problem and I need to resolve that problem. Me personally, I realize it's about the balance piece. Some people agree with that, some people disagree. But I feel like, if you think about it like a vehicle, if you pull too much to the right, it's going to be out of alignment. You pull too much to the left, it's going to be out of alignment. So it's important to kind of make sure you got it kind of steady Eddie, right? Make sure it's kind of in the middle, so the car doesn't veer off to the right or to the left. How do you do that? Well, I would say holding yourself accountable. I would say being honest with yourself, making sure you do what I like to call introspection. What's introspection? Well, if you find that people are calling you out on things or you're realizing you're feeling a certain kind of way about things, you have to be honest about that, right? In that situation I explained with the gentleman, I couldn't argue with him. He was right? Take care of it and keep it moving. Laugh about it, be honest, take a step back. And what I also find is, when you're vulnerable, you're being honest, it actually brings you and that person or those individuals closer together, right? Why is that? Because people respect honesty. Who hasn't been in that situation where they've been uncomfortable, right? I can raise my hand. So I've been here about 4 years. By that, I mean here in Washington for 4 years. And I'm still not completely comfortable with Washington. Do I like Washington? Yes, I love Washington. However, I'm not completely comfortable because there's just a lot of things going on I'm still learning about, right? Raise your hand if you've been in that situation, right? Again, be honest. And hopefully we can have that connectivity, right? Also, too, I grew up in the 70s. I'm 52 years old. I have friends who are a little bit older, friends who are a little bit younger. And I noticed that things are a little bit different now, right? The slang is different. People's priorities are different. People's values are different. Earlier, I talked about the men's and women's values, but that might be different depending on what generation you're from. Just keeping it 100. What if you're from a younger generation where, Honesty may not be their priority. You tell me, right? All of us have to kind of work together and kind of get along. What does that look like for you? Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm curious to see, your thoughts. What do you think about as far as what's your value? What are some things you like to talk more about as far as men's mental health? How's everything going for you? What can I do to support you? Right. So feel free to reach out, connect with us on Instagram. Make sure you guys reach out and just kind of let us know what we can do to support you. Okay. All right. Oh, one other thing too, as far as men's mental health. Last week I talked about doing certain things to kind of help yourself when you're going through a stressful situation. And I wanted to kind of share something today. I remember I talked about regulation, and what that means basically is if you're stressed out and let's say you're in traffic, or let's say, you heard some bad news and you just kind of get flustered, what can you do to kind of reset the mood? Well, first thing I'll recommend is to take a deep breath in that moment, hold it for 3 seconds, and then let it go. Now, why is that important? Well, when we get stressed out, we go to what we call the fight or flight mode. And what that does, that puts you in a mode to just like get either angry or to just basically want to escape. That doesn't mean it's not important, but we want to put you in a mental state where you can kind of come up with more blood to the brain. You can problem solve how to get out of it. Okay. And the fight or flight mode is important, but usually that's in a situation where it's like, let's say you're in a car accident and it's a life or death type situation. Well, you don't really need a lot of energy to kind of figure things out. You just have to respond quickly. You need a lot of adrenaline. Sometimes those particular thoughts are important, but most times if you take a deep breath, hold it for 3 seconds and just kind of let it go, what happens is it puts you in the moment. And I would suggest you do that 3 times. What happens is it puts you in the personal moment space, and it lets you just sit there for a second to know that you're okay. And then you'll problem solve with different strategies and different ideas to get yourself out of it. But also too, you realize like what's really, really important. A lot of times we put our energy in things and we got to ask ourselves, was it really that necessary? Right. And that's one thing I wanted to bring out too. A lot of times, we forget a special word I want to bring out to our particular listeners, and that's choice. And I'll spell it CHOICE. We always have a choice. And I think sometimes we get so caught up on certain patterns that we think we don't have a choice. But you can always choose to make a different choice. So if you notice a certain pattern of things that you would do, change it, right? And it will feel uncomfortable in the beginning, and that's okay. But as you practice it, you'll notice that your response towards situations will be different because you're reacting to them differently. Okay. And that part right there changed my life. And I just want to put that out there. So if you notice that you normally get mad, do the opposite. Let it go. And try it for a week and see what happens. Right. So rather than get mad, be like, man, just say, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna let it go. It's gonna feel awkward in the beginning because your body is so accustomed to do it. But mark my words, if you do it for a week, you'll notice you'll come up with better solutions. You'll ask yourself, really, was that necessary? Did I really do all of that? And then it's like you value your mental energy more, which actually gives you more mental energy to focus more on the things that are important to you, right? And so that's something that people don't think about, that when you're caught up on those particular thoughts, it actually drags your mental energy down and it makes you feel more tired, believe it or not, right? You're going home, you're feeling exhausted. You're like, man, I had a long day. Imagine if you didn't really connect with some of those things that you connected with in the past. You'll notice your day is lighter, right? If you go for walks and breathe it out, make sure you're breathing through your lungs and let it go. You'll notice you're feeling lighter. You'll still notice things that happen in front of you, but you're not like attracted to those things. It's kind of like driving on the road and you see it, but you just notice it. Yeah. Oh, someone just showed Jesus loves you. Turn to Jesus. He's on. Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yes, you do have to turn to Jesus. Yes, he's in heaven. And Jesus is all about what? Love, right? Love of self. Thank you so much for that, Charles. Appreciate that. Um, is that what you do in those situations? Do you turn to Jesus when you're in those situations? And sometimes, you might just need to take a step back, right? First, before you can even get to Jesus, you might have to just take a step back first and just say, okay, let me just kind of be in the moment. But you're right. You're right. What would Jesus do in that situation? Thank you again for your comments. Anybody else want to comment? Okay. You said turn to Jesus. No man, no female can give you the feeling. Yes, I agree with you. You're absolutely correct. And I'm glad you brought that up because, if you sit in that moment and you feel really good and you show appreciation for, what you've received for that day, you'll notice that your day will just kind of feel a lot better. So thank you for sharing that. You're correct. Right. But you have to practice those feelings. You're absolutely correct. You have to practice that. And another thing too is what's really powerful is when you practice those feelings, your body doesn't know the difference. So it's important to practice those consistently, and you'll notice that your life will change. So again, appreciate your comments, Charles. Anybody else, feel free to shout out to us. We're getting to that point right now. We're going to be wrapping it up for the end of the show here. Make sure you guys shout out for my guest, 6:00. Dr. Tracy should be coming on. Make sure you guys take a look at her. Living better together, living powerfully. Make sure you guys take a look at her. She'll be on from 6 to 7. And also next week, I believe, April 22nd through the 26th, Earth Deserves More Than a Day. You have interviews, panels, films, and much more. So make sure you guys take a look at that. That'll be pretty exciting. And again, appreciate you, Charles, for your feedback. Appreciate those individuals. See about 5 or 6 people out there. So thank you so much. Those other people listening, thank you so much. Let me know again. Reach back to me and let me know next week. What else should we talk about? You guys have a good one. It's about that time.